venture capital, golden ticket, or giant Ponzi scheme?
Who wouldn't want a piece of that magical money showering pie? Let's get ready for UnicornPrn, a podcast for founders who roll their eyes at phrases like "we're killing it" and "changing the world."
We riff about all the things you wish you could say out loud but can't or won't, like investor horror stories, founder mistakes, and bloated valuations.
The media has perpetuated this addiction to unicorn porn.
Nobody says if you take money, you have to constantly be raising money.
Before reality hits in Silicon Valley, companies exit.
I used to feel embarrassed that I wanted a lifestyle business.
Warning, these unfiltered conversations are highly opinionated, brutally honest, and politically incorrect. Please stop listening now if you're easily offended.
UnicornPrn is brought to you by Lloyd Lobo, Wall Street Journal bestselling author and co-founder of Boast AI, and Melissa Kwan, co-founder and CEO at eWebinar. I just read a study that said ping pong tables are the real productivity game changer in hypergrowth startups. Work hard, play hard culture.
I mean, you can create a BS study about anything, right? It's like that ad where more doctors smoke Camel cigarettes. Or I think there was a recent study that says eating cereal is healthier than eggs.
All of those things are like funded by CPG companies. I think that particular one was funded by Kellogg's. But what's really BS though is this whole culture fit concept, right? It's turned into a disguise for bias and gatekeeping to leave people out. Like, can I go drinking with you? Can we hang out with each other?
I mean, it's like the beer test for the old boys club, right? So, I mean, are we trying to find dating compatibility or are we trying to hire team members?
Yeah, and once you've found that special someone, then you inundate them with unlimited perks to get them to sign. I think you had a term for this.
Yeah, I didn't make it up. It's called love bombing. And it is a narcissist manipulation tactic to give you everything that you want, love bomb you in the beginning, so that you spend the rest of the relationship trying to get back to where you started. So
which is what?
Which is having everything that you want.
You know, I may have love bombed my wife.
Yes. I think we all do a little bit of that.
Yeah, like just
keep you on your toes.
Every time she's upset, love bomb her. But this is interesting. It's a negative connotation, right? You found something and you want them, and so you love bomb them. So like, yeah, I guess makes sense, right? With the startup world, it's like ping pong, unlimited LaCroix, unlimited meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, laundry. This one was funny. I was speaking with Jeff Lawson, CEO of Twilio, then CEO of Twilio, founder of Twilio, and he said the company next to him had 21 beers on tap. And he's like, man, what is this, right? Like, he's like, that means I'm going to have to get 22 beers on tap. But what if the company next to mine gets 25 beers on tap? Beanbags, sleep pods, unlimited vacation.
That nobody can use because if you leave, then you look lazier than the person next to you. So everyone's always at the office. But also, all this stuff is created or was created to keep you in the office.
Exactly. I mean, think about it, right? Like, I'm a new grad, right? And I'm at a startup which has sleep pods and bean bags and breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And they're doing my laundry. Why would I leave? It's actually cheaper to me to be at the office all day and just go home to crash. And if I could, I would crash in the office. One of the startups I was at the founding team of funded $6 million out of the gates. We had the bean bags and we had unlimited LaCroix in the fridge. Lunch and dinner was at the office. So people would stay late till 9, 10. You get a bunch of new grads who have nothing better to do, and you love bomb them, and in return, what you get is hustle porn. That's why I think Silicon Valley has been so accustomed towards the younger generation. We've created this myth that to succeed in startups, you have to be of a certain age group. If you're older, you're chastised, or this sort of profiling, unheard of profiling. You know, another way of saying culture fit, I realized. And I've spotted colleagues and friends, oh, that person wasn't a cultural fit. I'm like, you know, we've been through a few rounds of interviews with a number of people. And usually who you say is not a cultural fit is if they've got weird accents or they look like they're over 45. Are you profiling, or is it truly not a cultural fit?
Yeah, I mean, it's not all that free stuff that actually gets people more productive, right? Like it's aligned vision, mission, vibe. Like vibe is a real thing, energy with the team, how much they get along. And I think it's also like the lifestyle that you can offer people that gets them more productive. But lifestyle is not linked to stuff, right? It's like how you treat them and how they're able to manage their time when they're with the company.
It's the experience, and it's the purpose and how I feel deeply connected to it. But you still see articles, right? I mean, I recently saw this article that says, as the funding winter bites, startups are amping up perks. Not very dissimilar to 2015, when we were seeing headlines like tech companies are waging perk wars. And this is when unicorns were just starting to ramp up. It's no different than today. If funding's dried up and you have nothing to offer than the next person, then you got to offer some soft stuff to love bomb them, I guess, into joining your startup, right?
Yeah.
But there's another golden rule in the startups, which is hire fast and fire faster.
I mean, you mean hire recklessly when you have all this money, and then when your revenue can't keep up, you fire everybody, which is what we saw, I guess, really in the last year.
I mean, who needs a vetting process when you can just throw bodies at the problem in the name of hypergrowth? I mean, not to make fun of this, but during the pandemic, interest rates were low. Every startup saw artificial growth, and investors and the founders got delusional themselves. And they thought, hey, I'm going to continue growing at this rate. No, you're not. This was a black swan event. Everyone needed to transact online because the world was shut. So I needed to get Zoom and Shopify and Twilio, and basically startups exploded because they were getting an obscene number of customers. Now what the VC world and more of the founders thought is that they'll continue to see this growth. But if you didn't get Zoom and Shopify in 2020 and 2021, you're not going to in 2022. You didn't create a new market or explode the market. You just rolled it forward by a few years, right? And so all of these people flush with cash, investors funding them. Oh, you know what? We're going to find the next Airbnb is going to come out of this, and the next Uber is going to come out of this. Started funding them, and they started hiring willy-nilly. I mean, we went through this, right? Boast grew. December 2020, we were about 30-ish people. December 2021, we're 130 people.
I mean, let's dissect that a bit, right? Like, how many months was that?
From peak hiring, I think it was like 8 months.
Okay, so you hired 100 people in 8 months.
100 people in 8 months.
What was going through your mind? Like, who decided to do it? How did you do it? Where did you find the bodies?
I think,
what was the goal of all this?
My co-founder and I still wear the scars. And I think one of the key things is if you can turn 1 into 2 or 1 into 3, the venture math, then, you go get it. But that doesn't always mean throw bodies. I think we're accustomed to thinking that success means like a startup is a microcosm of a large company. And so the only way to grow is to throw more bodies, right? Now that I think of it, if you have to add more people, that means you failed at something that you couldn't accomplish yourself. That's my view. But nonetheless, flush with investor money, up-level the team. You hire executives from shiny logos. What do? They want to build their armies because they work at larger companies and they come with this whole hiring plan. It's natural, right? You're used to doing this. You work at a larger company. You have a whole hiring plan because based on that plan, you're going to hit departmental goals. And they bring that to your company. You're like, okay, you know what? If we want to hit these revenue numbers, I need this many people. That's how they think.
Yeah, that's just so crazy to me as a bootstrap company who has to be super lean, who really only hires jack of all trades because we can't have the bodies. Like, it is such a vanity metric right? You hear people say, oh, we have this many people. We have this many people.
It is a vanity metric.
When I hear someone say, I have this many people in my startup, I feel sorry for them. Like, I'm not congratulating them. Like, because as a person who hates managing people, I'm like, why would you want that many people? It sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, you see the comparison, right? Like Basecamp, bootstrapped, I think 80 people working 40 hours a week, no hustle porn, not working round the clock, right? You get all these perks and unlimited vacations, but you have these targets and these goals, and everyone around you is working round the clock. So you can't take that unlimited vacation. But you see Basecamp, everyone works from home or on their time, and whenever they feel like. There's no meetings, and they've got 80 people doing the same or more profits than Monday and some of their other competitors like ClickUp. That's huge, right? So I don't think you need people. And in fact, I feel the more people you add, the decision making gets inefficient, because now you got to communicate to more people, right? And it's like when you say something to somebody and that person carries the message to somebody else and then somebody else, it get diluted all the more. And I saw this, the decision making at 30 people was efficient. I mean, I think 2017 to 2020, December, we got 10 million ARR, right? And then you see as you add more and more people, one, you got to hire these people. So you got to spend all this time interviewing them as founders, as executives.
So were you interviewing them personally?
It was a combination of everyone interviewing them, right? If I could add value to the discussion, I'm interviewing them, right? But at some point, key executives are interviewing, right? If the key executives are hiring for their department, they're interviewing. They're part of the interview process. So one, you got to interview. You got to screen interview. Then you got to make the offer, negotiate, onboard, ramp time. All of this thing is time consuming, and it's taking away from something you could be doing, which is driving the outcome, right, for your business. So I think what's really important is when you come into funding, a lot of people say, I need to hit this financial number, and in order to fit this financial number, here's my hiring plan.
Yeah.
And they hire for the number versus saying, how can I hit the number without hiring? What can I do in the most lean, efficient way to hit that number? And let it be a little tough, right? Like it's like going to the gym. You lift heavier weights and you're struggling. And then the next time you go, you're not struggling anymore, right? And you get stronger for it. Pain is the precondition for growth. Make do with what you have, and then hire when you're breaking, when you're bursting at the seams. But what was happening is people are just hiring to create capacity for what they envisioned in growth 12 months down the line.
But how did you guys find so many people to even hire in such a short period of time?
Recruiters. So that's the other thing where you spend money on, right? As a funded startup, you spend a lot of money on recruiters. And a recruiter is taking 15, 20%
of the annual.
Of the annual, right? And so this is a hidden cost, by the way. A lot of these companies, to grow fast, they have recruiters. We had a recruiter. We have internal recruiter. We have an external recruiter. And so the internal recruiter is putting ads everywhere, doing cold outbound outreach. And what's really funny is a lot of these companies, to hire really fast, they're not hiring HR people. They're hiring actual recruiters.
Yeah.
These people just want to put bodies in seats. But when you grow that fast, there's the emotional side of recruiting, right? It's people management. Are they taken care of? It's culture, all of this stuff. A recruiter is not going to be able to make sure that as your company grows, your culture also scales. And do you have the processes and mechanisms in place for that to happen? The checks and balances so your culture doesn't break.
Yeah, but then it sounds like, I mean, as a founder of a small company, I'm the cultural interview, right? Because we hire developers, and David, our CTO, interviews them. But if we really want to bring them on board, I'm the cultural interview. Like I ask them, what do you actually care about? What are your goals? What do you consider, a high salary? Like I want to see if they fit into what we're looking for, but also if we can give them.
You can do that at 5-10 people, right?
Yeah, exactly. But what it sounds like also, because that's what I look for, right? I look for people who like really jive with the team, because we're also remote, which makes that cultural fit even more important, right? Because you're working alone. Like you don't have that water cooler talk every day, right? To like keep you there. So what it sounds like is when you have a recruiter, the values are kind of misaligned, right? Because a recruiter is paid based on people in seats.
People in seats, even in-house, their metric. Like we had an in-house recruiter, and now the benefit of our first in-house recruiter was she was an earlier part of the team. And the reason why we made her a recruiter was she was one of our top SDRs. And we're like, we need to put butts in seats.
Yeah.
And rather than spending obscene amount on external recruiters, just comp the internal person. Now, she understood our culture because she was friends with Alex and I.
Yeah.
And so she knew she was a good cultural interview to begin with. But nonetheless, the founder's vision and idea of culture is in the founder's head, right?
Yeah, but that's completely lost for an outside recruiter. Like
And-
they have a checklist of this person should do these roles.
It's roles, it's butts in seats. And so what happens is, I think you lose some of that messaging. It gets diluted. Interview. The more the founders are removed, the larger the company gets. The culture gets diluted as it's communicated, the mission, vision, values.
Did you guys think about culture before you even raised
we-
capital? Were you guys just, because you guys were bootstrapped, right?
We were bootstrapped and we never thought these things.
So
at
you
least-
couldn't even communicate that externally to
Even-
someone looking.
We thought about culture as it meant to us as founders, right?
Yeah.
And for us, culture was what? Like, do what's right for the customer, right? Do right by the employees, be transparent, do right by the community. Our culture literally was customers, community, and colleagues. That was it. Do right by everyone. If you can't go to bed at night, then don't take that action. And even if it means admitting you're wrong to a customer, you screwed up, you will do that. But do right by the customer, do right by the colleagues, do right by the community. If you treat people with love and help them grow, they'll treat your business with love. And so that means if Alex and I didn't want to go to the office, we're not going to force anyone to go to the office. We were hybrid. Before remote was cool, we were a remote first company. We were remote first since we started the company, right? Because we can't expect anyone to do something that we don't do ourselves, right? But that gets lost because you've now come into money and you always, I guess, naively think that yes, how you're operating at 30, you'll operate at 130. But what you don't realize is the next set of leaders you hire may be coming from a different culture. And if you're not deliberate about aligning them or making sure that they share the same set of values, then you may run the company like a missionary, right? And treat people with love, and they may run the company like a mercenary.
But you didn't, I think the problem was, I mean, you say that you and Alex still wear the scars on that. I'd love to hear what you mean by that. But it also seems like you didn't evolve into a big company, right? It wasn't like, let's grow from here to here. It was like, well, let's just pump everything in. So you didn't have time.
We got thrown into big.
You just reacted.
So
right?
this was the journey, right? Like the money came, I got COVID and almost died. I come back and we're like, I'm seeing now, right? Alex, CEO, I'm president. We have the HR person. The directive is to hire. Then we brought in some executives, and each executive is adding like tens of people. That's how it happens. And I think
was it still remote?
it was still predominantly a remote first culture with some satellite office because it happened during the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
But nonetheless, so the recruiters are tasked with hiring people and filling seats. And what you miss out is if you don't have a balance, either one of the founders or you don't have an internal person who's deliberately thinking about scaling culture and all the things you must do to scale culture so it doesn't break and hiring according to culture, you might have a problem on your hands because what your company looked like at 30 may not be the same company at 130 because now you've added some very powerful voices who culturally behave very differently. And it proliferates from the top to the bottom, right? Like the founders set the culture for the rest of the company, and then the leaders, right? And then the middle managers. So if you've hired leaders who don't have the same mindset or are not culturally similar to how you are, then they'll go and hire middle management that's like them, not like you. And all of a sudden now you've created this whole different culture. And then speaking of problems, the other thing I think we are very reluctant to let go when you're growing really fast is you inevitably will hire toxic people.
Yeah, but
right?
people become toxic later, right? It's hard to interview for.
No, people become toxic later, but there are some people who are just also inherently toxic. They were toxic somewhere else and they came here. And so...
But is that avoidable through like reference checks or whatnot? Like, I mean, there's some people that are just really good at interviewing.
There's lots of people who are just good at interviewing, but the issue is, right, a lot of us don't go the extra mile when we interview. So we'll interview 10 people and get fed up and be like, I need to fill the seat. And so I'm just going to hire the 11th person. No, do the extra interviews. Sometimes it's the 30th person you interview, right? And we'll just ask, like, this is the most ridiculous thing. We'll ask for references. Give me 2 references. Why would I give you a crappy reference?
I know, I never understood references. I never understood them.
Are you, like, why would you ask for a reference? Because, again, to me, that is lazy recruiting, right?
Yeah.
That again, like...
Are you allowed to check? Like, okay, if you don't ask for references,
you can
how
back channel.
do you...
I recommend back channeling everything. You're looking to raise money from investors. This person is going to be a part of your team. Forget team. If you raise money from an investor, this person is going to be a part of your journey for 10 years. And you will be spending more time with this person, with your co-founder and then your investors, probably more than you spend with your wife, right? Because you spend all your time at work as a startup founder, right? So why wouldn't you back channel?
But are there rules against that though? I always wondered about that because I always look on LinkedIn and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to reach out to the old companies.
I don't think there is any written codified rule according to me. So you're hiring somebody. Just see who you have in common. For me, a red flag is I have a lot of LinkedIn connections, as do you. I'm also like in Silicon Valley, so I'm 1 degree away from everyone. If you're from Silicon Valley or you're from Vancouver or Toronto or Calgary, which is all the places my company has an office in, and I have no 2nd degree connection with you, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
To me, right?
But it's like a LinkedIn connection with like 10 connections.
Yeah, and so if there are connections, I like to back channel as best as possible. Close to doing that, I also ask the person who gives me references saying, hey, why don't you schedule a reference call with your person for me? Don't put this work on me, right? So I think it just says, 1, they really want the job, and 2, they're not afraid to make the ask because they've done a good job there. But nonetheless, you inevitably will start hiring toxic people. You know why? When you're hiring en masse, you miss some of the steps. What happened during the pandemic? We created 1,000 unicorns during the pandemic. What was the miss there? In the chase to invest in the best companies with speed, because apparently we're going to miss a train, we didn't do due diligence, right? What was the company that shut down that raised? We both got this Envision. We just got the notice. Yeah. I thought it was a great product, but apparently it shut down. They raised during the pandemic at a 1.7 billion valuation. Hopin. So many such companies, right? Why did that happen? They were overvalued because people were rushing to invest based on short-term metrics. And then they overhired and spent a lot of money, but the growth didn't sustain because we talked about it. It was a black swan event. They didn't explode the market. They just rolled it forward a few years. So this all boils down to hurry leads to a lapse in due diligence. When you're in a hurry, you cut corners. The same thing when you're hiring and your recruiter's like, I got 1 metric to put more bodies in seats. I need to like add 20 people a month, for example. They'll cut some corners. You'll pay the price eventually as a company. And so inevitably you'll have toxic people. Like I think some of the toxic people that I've found are like folks that are so nice to the founders and then the leaders, but they treat everyone below them like crap. Or somebody who's like just gaslighting you or perpetually gossiping. Like, within a few weeks of joining, they're complaining about everything. And they don't complain to you or their bosses, but they just, they go and they're just trying to find a year with somebody. Oh, did you see this?
It's like
that
friends.
Yeah.
Some friends
like,
do that.
have you noticed that the coffee is always stale? right? That's how it starts, just to get a reaction. And you may have not noticed because you're so into the passion of what you're doing. And then one day you wake up and say, after the third time, the coffee is kind of stale. And then it becomes a whole conversation, and that turns into gossip. And then it eventually turns into, these guys are taking advantage of employees and they're slaving them. And guess what? They're serving us shitty coffee because they want to poison us, yada, yada, right? Like, that's how it perpetuates. So it's really, really important to catch that early on. But you probably have experiences with toxic employees yourself.
I mean, I think the most experience I've had was when I was part of other companies. And it's so frustrating, right? Because I'm a high performer. Like, I am always doing the best that I can, regardless if I own the company or not. Like, that's just been who I've always been. And when you see someone in your department or not in your department that does, what you're talking about, it's so frustrating because I'm like, wait, but I'm getting less pay than that guy, right? And I'm more productive, but but they have better accounts because they're, a worse salesperson, for example. Like that actually happened a lot at a big company that I worked in. It was like, I always got the worst accounts because I was the best and most aggressive salesperson. I did the most cold calls. I set up the most appointments. And the worst people got the best accounts because they were easy. So it was just frustrating that I wasn't rewarded. But because it was easy for them, then they would do things like, hang around, not work super hard, ask me what I'm working on and and things like that. But I remember there was one guy that he was not a salesperson. He was in sales. He was like an account manager, right? He was a farmer, not a hunter. And he had the biggest accounts. And because he had the biggest accounts, he couldn't get fired. But he didn't even close that account. That account came through a web form. It was just passed to him because he was the guy that was there. And it happened like long before I was there. But he would do things like he wouldn't value anyone else's job, right? He would set up a demo for a product demo with a CS person for a client's 5-year-old girl because she likes demos. And when the CS person jumps on the call, it would be like a child on the demo.
Ridiculous.
But he would do that because it would help him close the deal. Right. And, and he would always pretend to work, but he wasn't. And once he was like, so my company was acquired and I was setting up, an executive meeting with one of the largest, most prestigious firms in New York with the entire executive team to tell them, the company's been acquired. I'm introducing you to this new company. The new company has all these other products that you can buy. Right. So he set up the invite. I forgot why. Oh, because I wasn't in New York. This was happening in person in New York. I find out afterwards, after the entire meeting with the CEOs, they're like, the CEOs of these companies don't go to meetings. He forgot to invite the CMO, who was my contact. So here it was, this entire executive meeting happened in person about this acquisition, and the lead, my champion, was not there. And this is someone that I built a relationship with for 5 years. So I just lost it. And guess what? Because he had the biggest account, he didn't hear about it again. So there was I've been in a lot of those situations where I was in it, not that, I was a employer of that. Just because we have such a small team, we really can make sure that things like that, nobody stays on board long enough to become that person. If we even see a sign of that, that person has to go because we don't have the luxury. We have 10 people on our team. Everybody has to produce. Hey guys, real quick. Think about how you found out about this podcast. Maybe you saw it on social or someone sent it to you. The only way this grows is by word of mouth. So if you're willing to help us out by sharing it with others you think would enjoy this podcast as much as you do, it would mean a lot to us. Whether that's writing a review, sharing a tweet, or telling your next door neighbors, that would be amazing. Thanks so much. And now let's get back to the episode.
That's like the quote in Batman, right? You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the bad guy, the villain. But what's even worse, a lot of these companies, they put a blind eye to toxic people because they're performing, or there's some optical illusion that they're performing in some capacity. So no matter they gaslight or they gossip and cause all these things, because it gives you comfort that somebody's in that seat, and no matter how toxic they are, you're not seeing the impact they have on your business, but the pain, which is short term, of filling that seat and onboarding somebody and firing this person seems more difficult to you in the short term, but actually in the long term, it's the easiest thing to do. At Boast, in the early days, we had a very toxic salesperson. He would sign clients. Arguably, they weren't good, right? Because they were small, crappy clients, or they would churn 2 years later kind of thing. But he was just literally rude and difficult with a lot of the team members. And Alex made the difficult decision to let him go. And so when we let him go, his immediate was, you're going to lose all the business in Vancouver. And we took that hit because it's a small bootstrap company. And it was a short-term hit, but in the long term, our business over time tenfolded there. He was keeping away the progress of everyone because he had this diva mindset that everything was about him, right? But what's even worse is now you've raised money, you have investors around the table, and you hired like this ultra-seasoned C-suite, and this person becomes toxic. And you're like, man, I was looking to fill this. Like all my life, I bootstrapped and I freaking suffered. And I said, you know what? When I have money, this is the first role I'm going to hire. And then you go out and hire this person, and recruiter fees and equity and signing bonus and ramp time. And now this person ends up being really toxic, and you're hearing rumblings, and it's becoming very obvious. But so many startups want to turn a blind eye, and it's natural. It's a human instinct. You're like, you're afraid of confrontation because you brought this supposedly seasoned, logoed executive who's more experienced than you, and now you got to have this conversation with this person, or just losing this person is so painful to you because you know you didn't have the money for the longest time, and you know how long it took you to fill that seat. You're like, oh, will I even find somebody? And I tell people, resist the urge. Investigate and eliminate, because if you don't, it will destroy your culture. The analogy is like, in a boat, right? You got individual rowers. They can't, one or two bad rowers can't take your boat in a different direction. But the guys at the front, the captains, if you have the wrong one, they'll steer you in a completely different direction. A bad leader can not only set your company back by years, they could even lead to you eventually shutting down. Look at a lot of the cases, right? At the early stages, why startups fail is founder disagreements in most cases, or can't get to product market fit. At scale, why do you think these shutdowns happen? When you're at 10, 20, 30 million ARR at 100% NRR, you can't be killed. So then why do you get killed? Like, why does a company like Envision die at the kind of revenues they were? It's because of things like this, right? It's leadership at the top that steers you in a different direction, and then you start losing. First you lose employees, then you lose market share.
I mean, I want to read you something that I wrote about why A players are so important. I shared this on LinkedIn, I forgot when, a few months ago or a year ago. A players surround themselves with other A players because they challenge and learn from each other. B players surround themselves with C players to make themselves feel like A players. And A players will only tolerate B players for so long before they leave, right? Everybody thinks culture is, lip service, what you use to recruit. But well-meaning A players who really want to contribute to the team, people like me and you, they will leave or get pushed out because they don't want to be around other people who are not like them, right? So I think when that happens, when your A players leave, you can't now hire new A players because
it's hard.
It's hard. They don't really exist, right? And then what happens? Your growth and your profitability then takes a hit. And it doesn't happen just overnight, but it happens gradually, right? It's like this virus. Like, I've quit jobs before because I was more hardworking than my boss. And my boss would say things to me like, well, why do I have to do that when I have you? But your people will only ever be as good as you are, not better.
You gotta lead.
You are the example.
Lead from the front, lead from the middle, not like, basically there was this graphic I saw where the difference between a leader and a boss is the boss sits on the cart, right? Like on the carriage, and like whips the employees that are the horses. and a leader is in the front, like, playing tug of war or carrying something and carrying the load and leading the way. And that's the difference. I think A players are leaders and B players are bosses. And that is the key difference. But what happens is when the A players leave, you're left with these B and C players who are just collecting a paycheck, looking at each other from the side of their desk and saying, I told you so. They're watching the train wreck and saying, I told you so. I can't say this enough now. I mean, I'm a board member in 3 companies. One's public, one's scale company, one's an early stage startup, advisor, investor in a number of startups. Culture is the leading indicator of growth. If you keep making excuses for toxic people, if hiring, firing, and promotions are not according to company values, it will eventually destroy your culture and hamper the productivity of other people. Everyone will be like, culture is lip service. If you say we're a meritocracy, we promote from within, and then there's a leadership role and you're running ads in the newspaper, they know it's BS. Or if you have a toxic person and you don't fire this person, then they're like, okay, it's lip service.
But everyone sees that. So everyone sees, okay, well, that person can do that and still stay and collect the same paycheck as me, so I can just work less.
Exactly.
So then you're also encouraging an A player to be less of themselves instead of maximizing their potential.
Or if it's a true A player, they'd be like, screw this, I have a lot of opportunities. No matter, A players will have jobs anywhere. And the worst is not, 2 sides of this, right? A players staying and doing less, but worse is the A players leave and then you got the B players and nobody to hold them accountable, and then the gossiping and the gaslighting proliferates. Culture is literally the leading indicator of growth. If you treat your people with love and help them grow, they'll treat your business with love and your business will grow. And I can't say this enough. It sounds so fluffy, right? If you look at the most sustainable companies over time, it's culture. If good people leave and you're left with bad, untrained people who are gossiping, your company will get destroyed. And you can take any example of scale companies. This is why companies fail at scale. In the start, it's like co-founder issues, it's product market fit issues, I can't find a reputable, scalable channel. But once you're at scale, and you have product market fit and your customers don't leave you, this is the only reason why you'll fail.
I mean, the other problem is having B and C players on your team is not just hitting your bottom line. It's also forcing you to hire more people to do the same job. So you're unable to run a tight ship. You're unable to run a tight ship. Now you're managing so many more people, and now your attention is divided. Right? Because they actually need more management, not less.
They need more management. The best employees are proactive and they don't need to be managed. You hire people and get out of their way and they do their best work. They're autonomous. They need love and they need recognition and they need a purpose, but they show up.
They're the true unicorns.
They're the true unicorns. And the mediocre employees are needy emotionally and also like financially. They're needy. Nothing is ever good enough. And they complain and they complain and they complain, and then they make others complainers around them. So it's very, very important to watch out for these things and nip it in the bud, because it's like a cancer. It'll grow and it will destroy your company.
So how do we build a better and more productive work culture intentionally?
Definitely. For starters, let's just ditch this whole concept of perks and ping pong tables, right? My learnings from observing companies around me and being a part of Boast, seeing it grow through the ups and downs, because we bootstrapped to 10 with 30 people, and then now the company is over 20, and we made hiring mistakes. We had lapses in DD, but we also had to recover from it, right? A lot of people wouldn't have the chance to recover from it. I'm proud that it's not the mistake you made, right? Like they say, like he said, like Rocky said in the movies, Stallone said it, it's not how hard you get hit, right? Or it's not how hard you can hit, but it's how hard you get hit and can keep moving forward. So as you scale, like from 0 to 1, things will break. From 1 to 5, a lot of things will break. From 5 to 10, a lot of things will break. And then at 10, you're actually a completely different company, right? And especially when you take money at 10, you're becoming a different company. Many, many things will break. Your systems will break because it was not designed. You cheaped out as a bootstrap company. Now you're funded. You need all these tooling and systems. You need, you never envisioned that you'll have 100 more people. So you didn't create the processes. You can't just create a process for something that you didn't envision would exist. So now you got to create these things on the fly. Things will break. What matters is, can you swiftly and nimbly recover from it? It's not how hard you hit, it's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And a lot of startups think that, oh, I've raised money, I'm gonna punch really hard. No, things will not work. Everyone has a plan until you're punched in the face. You gotta move fast and iterate fast and every step of the way. So one of the key things that enables you to do that is culture, right? Culture is not what you write on the wall. It's how people behave when the leaders are not in the room. And one of the key things of figuring that out is purpose. Why do I show up every single day? Why? We talked about this. Like, you show up every single day because you want to live the life you want to live that brings you joy, freedom. What is the vision? Meaning, as a function of our purpose, what will the world look like? What is the mission? How do we do it? And the last one, which is most important, how do we behave? If transparency is one of your values, but then some of the execs you hired only share things on a need-to-know basis, it's going to erode your culture. If you say, we believe in deep reviews, or we're detail-oriented, but then anytime you've probably seen this, you hop into a boss for your monthly review, performance review, and they're on their phone, they're distracted. You're like, okay, this value is lip service. So make sure your vision, your purpose, your mission, and your values are front and center, and everyone you hire is according to those values. The other thing is, now that I've learned, you're not in a hurry. It's better to not hire than hire in a hurry. So talk to that extra 30, 40 people if you need to. Look for the romantics, meaning they love your culture and they love your vision so much that they come to the interview so prepped about you and tell you about the things that you didn't know. Right? One of the reasons we took in money from the investors that we did is because they came so prepared to the meetings. They made it easy. They had so much knowledge about our company, about our industry, that we're like, wow, they're doing like this free work, right? And so hire people like that. And if you can, with generative AI and labor arbitrage and work from home, you can try before you buy. You don't have to adopt this concept of a startup is a microcosm of an enterprise, and your success is determined by the number of employees. Lose this misnomer, right? Just shed this. Your success is not determined by the number of employees you have. Your success is determined by the number of paying customers and that you keep, and the revenue you keep, and your profits you have. And if you're doing it with 80 people, not 8,000 people, like Basecamp, more power to you. Right? That means less headache, like you said. Hire for trajectory, not for tenure. And I say this to everyone. I think I should put it on a t-shirt. If you keep hiring people on tenure versus trajectory, you become the very thing you set out to disrupt. You'll become the government. Like, we're in the space. So think about it. Boast automates a government inefficiency, right? And if we keep hiring people on tenure versus trajectory, we'll eventually probably become the government, right? We don't want to be bureaucratic. You want to hire people who are jack of all trades, who can flex in multiple ways, who can roll up their sleeves, and they are moving with such velocity that when you attach to them, your trajectory also explodes. And you can spot that. A lot of times you can spot that on what they do outside of their 9 to 5. A good example is, so Gokul Rajaram, the angel investor I talked about, is someone I admire a lot. And he always says this story about how he used to lurk outside of his 9 to 5, go to different teams around Google and just volunteer his time. And one such team led him to the Google AdSense project, and the rest is history. He's a multi-hundred millionaire now, right? And so people who push their boundaries are the high trajectory people versus people who say, yeah, you know what, I'm just going to check a box, right? Don't hire those people. And then the last one is openness. We started the conversation with culture fit being more about gatekeeping, a bias for gatekeeping and hiring my buddies. And I've spotted this trend over and over again. Like I think at one point I called out a few people. I'm like, man, everyone you say no to, citing cultural fit, is like either over 45 or is like English is their second language. This can't be like a cultural fit issue. This is a you wanting to hire your drinking buddies issue, right? And so openness ultimately is the biggest enabler of growth. As long as they align with your values, they can bring a new set of values and it adds to your culture, right? Good leadership means being open and honest with your team. You want to make sure that the leaders are open and honest. What happens is when you hire high-flying, logoed executives, they're afraid of wanting to feel embarrassed when they make a mistake. Every decision is like, yeah, it should be right. I come from a big company. That's the opposite of how it works in a startup, right? We're failing every single day. Like we pride ourselves on failing because the more often you fail, the more often you'll learn and the faster you'll move. Whereas larger companies, they operate on longer time horizon decisions, they pontificate and pride themselves on being right. So when you just be mindful of who you bring into your culture, because these people are more likely to not bring their vulnerable self. When they don't bring their vulnerable self as a leader, others know that there's a problem, but they can't confront. And I think honest debate and honest criticism is very critical for driving growth. But when there's no honest debate, then people know, but they're not going to say anything. And when they don't, they just passively commit to whatever they put in front of them. Okay, you know what? If I say something, then this leader is going to shit all over me and make my life difficult because I brought up this issue, which is an obvious one, and it impacts them because it was their idea. So then they passively commit. And when you passively commit to anything, you half-ass it, and then they look at the train wreck from the side of their desks and say to each other, I told you so. So it's very, very important. I think everything starts with that culture.
Yeah, I mean, for us as a small company, we think about this differently, right? Like, I think about this as a competitive advantage to bring people onto our team that wouldn't otherwise, because we can't compete on salary. Like, that's not even where we start. It's not a point of discussion, right? But we also have perks. They just don't come in the form of physical goods, right? Like ping pong tables and pool tables and cool offices, right? Like, our perks in our culture comes in the lifestyle that we want to give you and that we can give you, but that has to be aligned, right? So where do we start? We start with being ultra transparent about why we do what we do. David and I have this company as a lifestyle company. We are not making this a unicorn. That is the first conversation that I have on my cultural interview, right? Is I want everybody to know that this is not, the typical startup that they read about. Like, we own ourselves as a lifestyle company. And what does that mean? Right? Like, we don't set alarm clocks. We take me time off. We encourage you to. All the benefits that we have as a founder, we give to you. So we do have, no vacation policy. Just let us know if you're going to be away. Like, tell someone and don't ghost. And the customer always comes first. You can do anything you want as long as the customer always comes first, right? So if people say, oh, I have a dentist appointment on Friday, they're not asking for the time off. They're telling me where they're going to be. And then what ends up happening is you create a lifestyle where usually people that are a bit older, in their 30s, maybe they have young families, they really care about this because for the first time, they are masters of their own schedule and no one checks in on them, right? We tell people we have no meetings. We don't micromanage. There's a list of items that you can pick from on Monday and you can work on them as you wish. David checks the code and then, you fix it or you don't, and then it gets committed. Everybody works on their own time. So for the right person, this is amazing, right? This is magical because they don't come from that environment, right? And so we give people complete trust, complete autonomy to make all their own decisions. We encourage them to speak up because we also hire in, Ukraine, Vietnam, like just in cultures where people aren't really encouraged to speak up. We want them to be part of the process, right? We want them to know the impact that they have. If we say something you disagree with, if there's a feature you disagree with, tell us. We don't know all of our blind spots. So we want to make everybody on our team know that they have impact. And the way that we do that, we have a mentions channel on Slack. And because I'm customer facing, anytime there's a customer testimonial or someone says something nice about us on LinkedIn, on social, they email me, I screenshot it and I put that in the mentions channel, because developers and product people are completely removed from the customer and from the product. And I want them to know that their work is making a difference. I want them to be proud, and as they should, right? Be what they're for what they're doing, because they're really changing people's lives. We support personal growth. Anyone wants to take a course, they want to go to a conference, we pay for it, right? We encourage side hustles, right? People on our team have side hustles. This is a side hustle, right? Right here on UnicornPrn,
Exactly.
right? Because if that's what it takes for you to be creative, so be it. But the customer comes first, right? And everybody knows that, right? That is the mantra. Customer comes first. And so what ends up happening is you have people now on the team, and we're transparent about this before we bring them on board, who appreciate the opportunity. They don't want to lose it. So they're not asking, what is the pay? They're basically saying, where can I sign up? Because I want this lifestyle. And because they appreciate the role, they want to be here. And so you've now, through this process, created a culture of accountability. People show up. You don't ask them, right? They deliver. And every time they deliver, it's the highest quality of what they can make, because they don't want to lose this position. And we always, Dave and I, lead by example, right? Like, we live good lives because we want our team to know that we lead good lives. We tell them we go to Burning Man. We tell them we're taking 4 days off for, a festival or whatever. Like, they know where we are, because we want them to copy us. We want them to know that by being with us, you can live the life you want. And now we're finally profitable. So all the profits that we make actually get reallocated immediately to make up for things that we had to take concessions in. Like earlier, a couple of years ago, we couldn't pay everybody the highest salaries. But our only goal right now is to get everybody up to market salary. And they know that, because the Stripe channel is also open. There's no secrets, right? Every single channel on Slack you can join. And if you ask us about our financials, it's pretty open, because we want people to know that they're part of something much bigger than themselves.
And that's a great way to build culture, is you lead by example. And what's right for you is also right for the next person. What's good for you is also good for the next person. You don't have favoritisms. You don't make concessions based on people's role or what they can do for you. There's no concession because you're a high-flying salesperson and this person is an SDR. Everyone gets the same treatment. I think that level playing field and leading by example goes a long way. The only thing is you eventually might get to a point where you raise money and now you got investors at the seat of the table, and there will always be this, this founder within you that says, hey, I've only built a company this far, so I need to bring the experience. Don't second guess yourself, because don't compromise your culture for any shiny logo or experience. I love what you said about creating a culture of accountability, because people show up then because they love what they're doing and for the purpose than 22 beers on tap, right? I mean, it's funny. I've even worked with executives who send deliberately emails on Sundays, but just deliberately going out of your way to send an email at a specific time, Sunday afternoon, where people might be playing or taking a nap. You do it 3 times, and the 4th time people expected that this is a ritual now, right? It goes from becoming a one-off thing to a ritual. And when you create a ritual like that I'm going to email you an important company update on a Sunday late afternoon or Sunday night before after your dinner, that means I own that time from you. And now all of a sudden you've you're destroying the culture, and that is key. You know, I had the fortune of studying cultures of some of the most sustainable companies, and this is not the tech companies during the unicorn porn age or during the .com boom, but this is like some of the most iconic brands like the Harley Davidsons and the Apples and the Nikes for my book From Grassroots to Greatness, which became a Wall Street Journal bestseller. And there were 6 common traits. It's called Camper, and it's as cheesy as it may sound. I say if you proactively institute Camper in your company, you'll have happy campers. And C stands for connection. Everyone wants to feel connected with one another. A stands for autonomy. Nobody wants to be micromanaged. If you just watch over somebody's shoulders, they're out. Hire smart people, get out of their way. You have people working remote and they're connected to they know what they need to do because they're connected to the purpose. M stands for mastery. Give people opportunities to learn and get better and better and better at what they do versus being typecast. Nobody wants to just keep doing the same thing forever, right? P stands for purpose. Like, what is the greater purpose I'm driving that's beyond the financial gain for the company? E stands for energy. Infusing that desire, that spark that fuels people to get up and get excited. That energy keeps it going, right? Like going to a conference, you may be engaged with talks and all of a sudden you get a boring speaker and everyone's on their phone, their laptop, or just leaves the conference room and kills the energy. So keeping that energy alive is key. And the last one, which you said you do really well with posting messages on Slack, is recognition. Right? Connection, autonomy, mastery, purpose, energy, recognition. When you proactively recognize people for even the smallest thing, they keep coming back for more. We're not in a world where we're doing business with robots or working with robots yet. And until you're in a world where people are buying from people, people are working with people, recognizing people proactively will be a key trait to having a sustainable culture.
I think that's a good place to wrap up. So Lloyd, today, what is your one hot take?
Ooh, my one hot take is, what you do, which is actually what's good for the leaders is good for everybody. Lead by example and no favoritism. One rule for everybody.
I think mine is culture is not what you write on the wall, right? It's not the list that you recruit with. It is the thing you do every day, right? It's how you make decisions, how you live, how you produce, how you communicate. It's how you act, right? It's how a tribe, I guess, interacts with each other. And how, like, even if you have something written on the wall and how you act doesn't fit that, like, it's going to be very obvious. And that's where I think some of the things we talk about, you create like some toxic environments and, people coming and going.
The job of a leader is to build, inspire, and motivate a team to deliver. And deliver is always the output of that equation, right? Building, inspiring, and motivating a team. And it's not a one and done activity. As a leader, you have to show up every day, because if you don't, then people won't either. And your values and your behavior enable you to do that. How you show up in accordance with values day in, day out is what will create that culture.
And that's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, we hope you'll hit the subscribe button to the UnicornPrn podcast on your favorite podcast app. Head over to our website, UnicornPrn.com, to see the show notes of every episode. UnicornPrn is spelled UnicornPrn. That's UnicornPrn without the O. You can also join our mailing list to be notified of new episodes or when we have hot gossip to share. We promise to only share things you'll actually care about.
If you have topics you want us to rip apart, perhaps you got something you always wanted to say but didn't have the cojones to do it, we'll do it for you. Just connect with us on LinkedIn, Lloyd Lobo and Melissa Kwan.